A century-old amusement park that could be lost forever.
We're dying on the vine down here.
Our time is over. That's serious.
A divided family on the verge of a painful split.
No amusement park in the world has been owned by a family as long as this one.
The family loyalties just tend to get disintegrated. It's just a pattern for disaster.
And a reprieve from the governor. But will it be enough?
It's the day after Labor Day. The amusement park's not open down there. My father is flipping in his grave right now.
I'm Jamie Colby in Ocean City, Maryland, an irresistible Atlantic resort town known for its golden beaches and this historic boardwalk. Now, the population may read 7,000, but more than 8 million visit every single year. And I'm here to meet a family that has a strange inheritance that's been an icon on this boardwalk for more than a century. Hi, Doug.
Hi.
I'm Jamie.
Nice to meet you.
So nice to see you, too. Your family really is so well known here.
Yeah, I'm afraid we are, yeah. We've been here a long time.
A long time indeed, since 1890 to be exact. Doug Trimper's great-grandparents, Daniel and Margaret Trimper, purchased 2 city blocks of oceanfront land. They start with a pair of small hotels, but in 1902 decide to risk everything on a new attraction. Daniel wants to bring in a ride unlike any seen before in Maryland. He orders a massive carousel from the Herschel Spillman Company. With a diameter of 51 feet, the merry-go-round is one of the largest built up to that point. How special is the carousel?
It's pretty unique. There's 48 hand-carved animals on it with real horsehair tails. It has oil paintings around the top. I mean, it's just not the sort of thing that's made anymore.
The carousel is originally powered by a steam engine, and rides cost a nickel. But those nickels add up. When Daniel Trimper dies in 1929, he leaves ownership of a thriving operation to his 7 children, and they pass it on to theirs. Under the 3rd generation of Trimpers, the park enters its golden era, with the leadership of Daniel Trimper III and Doug's father, Granville.
My father, all he ever wanted to do was run the amusement park. He was the youngest person in the planet's history to own and operate a Ferris wheel.
Starting in the 1960s, Granville upgrades the park's rides in both scale and theme. In 1964, he commissions a former Ringling Brothers art director to build a haunted house. Granville later opens the Trimper's Wheels of Yesterday attraction, a fleet of vintage cars that includes a 1914 Overland driven by the TV and movie comic Jack Benny. In the 1980s, he restores the famous carousel and erects the park's first roller coaster.
He had big ideas for the amusement park. You know, that was his dream. The man was just crazy about amusement rides.
Over the next decades, profits keep climbing. But the park's success is an exception to the rule within the industry. Amusement park historian Jim Futrell tells me that since the 1960s, family-run operations like the Trimpers have become a dying breed.
With the interstate highways and the shift to corporate theme parks, a lot of the family-owned parks fell by the wayside.
What does a family-owned amusement park do with that kind of competition?
Well, I think you have to know your place in the market.
Trimpers did seem to know its place, trading on its rich history and tradition.
No amusement park in the world has been owned by a family as long as this one.
In the world?
In the world. And these are rides that have been around for generations, and people come to these shore communities for generations.
But nostalgia must compete with ever wilder thrill rides at bigger parks. Trimper's attendance tumbles in the 1990s. Then at the turn of the 21st century, another challenge arrives in the form of another wild ride: the real estate boom.
In that decade alone, 15 amusement parks closed throughout the country on the seashore just because of the value of their land outstripped the value of the business.
Oceanfront amusement parks across the country are selling out for big paydays. Coney Island's vintage Astroland takes $30 million to build condos. Panama City, Florida's Miracle Strip goes dark in a $15 million deal.
It's tough to say no to something like that.
But Granville, now in his late 70s and still park president, has zero trouble saying no. He'd much rather hold on tight to his family's boardwalk empire than cash in his tickets. And Doug is a chip off the old block.
You're making people happy, and the thing my dad liked the most about his job was sitting on that bench every night watching people be happy.
But after 5 generations, more and more Trimpers share a slice of the pie. And some family members no longer feel the amusement park magic. We spoke with one shareholder who wished not to be named, who told us some owners just feel the business no longer makes sense and think the time's come to sell. Joe Harrison, one of the Trimper family attorneys, says this divide is a common theme among family businesses.
Trying to keep a business and a family for a long period of time is very difficult. The family loyalties just tend to get disintegrated. It's just a pattern for disaster.
Ownership of Trimpers is now split among 7 families with a total of around 22 stakeholders. Doug says 2 of those families are becoming increasingly vocal about wanting to sell the park to cash in on the real estate boom.
How hard is it to have to deal with a family member who is only saying, show me the money or else?
It was probably the only thing in my father's life that really caused him any real anguish.
In 2007, the majority of the Trimpers family board of directors still want to keep the park open, but find themselves backed into a corner. That's because the beachfront development boom causes the park's property taxes to skyrocket.
The new property tax assessments came out, and I was like, oh my God, what's happened here? Our property taxes increased $500,000 at once. Our annual profit generally ran at that time around $300,000. So it was
Those numbers don't work.
No, they don't work at all.
That must have been sad for your dad.
Nobody wants to be the Trimper to close the park. He said it wasn't going to be him, and yet he didn't have any more answers.
Granville and Doug know they better come up with some answers if this century-old amusement park is going to make it.
Do you have any idea how many children you have to spin in a circle to pay $1 million of taxes alone?
That's next.
But first, our strange inheritance quiz question. First designed in France in the 1600s, carousels were originally created for what purpose? Is it military training, wedding celebrations, or scientific experiments? The answer when we return. Now, the answer to our strange inheritance quiz question. What was the original purpose of carousels in France during the 1600s? The answer is A, military training. Carousels were built to train young noblemen to use their weapons while riding.
In 2007, father and son Granville and Doug Trimper are scrambling to keep open their family's century-old amusement park along the boardwalk in Ocean City, Maryland. The development boom has caused the park's property taxes to soar, making it impossible to stay in business.
There's only a level of government spending that is sustainable by businesses before the businesses have no more to give.
The tax hike ups the pressure from Trimper family members who think it's finally time to get out of the amusement business and sell their valuable beachfront land.
I don't get it, Doug. You sell off the amusement business and you build condos and a shopping mall here, you're going to make 10, 20, maybe 50 times more money.
Well, I believe that, but my whole family's always been in this business, and it was a legacy that we all feel an obligation to try and do our part to continue.
What then about selling some of its attractions, like the Wheels of Yesterday or even that vintage 1902 carousel, to make way for new thrill rides? Jim Futrell, who's written a series of books on amusement parks, says some have done that.
So tell me the value of a park like this.
Some of the irreplaceable rides that they have, the antique carousel, the haunted house, those things you don't find anymore. They're really living pieces of history. Back in the 1980s, they took off as a collectible, and you saw a lot of parks that at that time were kind of struggling. See that as a way to raise some quick cash.
Collectors have always been especially interested in the ride that put Trimpers on the map.
Oh, my goodness.
Only 24 Herschel Spillman carousels are still spinning today, and just 5 of those include a unique menagerie like the Trimpers.
What is really wonderful about these rides is that each one of these was carved by a person. So there is blood, sweat, and tears in each one of these animals.
And what's this?
This is a hippocampus. It's
A what?
Hippocampus. It's essentially a sea monster.
Is it more valuable because it's so rare?
I've only known about 1 or 2 of these to actually be auctioned off. You could easily go probably 6 figures back at the peak.
6 figures?
Back at the peak of the collecting craze.
In the end, selling the carousel would be giving up on the Trimpers family legacy, and Granville refuses to do that just yet. But he does realize change is needed. And so Granville, who had been the heart and soul of the Trimper operation since the 1960s, puts Doug at the controls.
My dad was getting on in years and ill at the time that this happened. I was the next in line to do it, so just started doing what had to be done in order to try and survive.
Doug's first step towards survival? With the help of attorney Joe Harrison, Doug appeals the park's land value assessment, which was based on sky-high property sales prior to the national real estate crash.
It was my job to try to go ahead and show them that the numbers that they had were just out of whack in that environment at the time.
Doug, meanwhile, takes his fight to the public, writing letters to local newspapers and politicians.
Do you have any idea how many children you have to spin in a circle to pay $1 million of taxes alone? Just how much can anybody bear? People say you ought to put condominiums in down there. No, we want to run an amusement park. The new county property tax assessments just came out. They sealed the deal for us. Our time is over.
Our time is over. That's serious.
The public response is overwhelming. Politicians across the state jump on the Save Trimpers campaign. Even Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley tours the park and puts the Trimpers land appeal on a fast track. The state assembly goes a step further, taking up a bill that could provide additional relief. Will the tax relief come? More importantly, if it does, will the Trimpers take it? The surprising answer next on Strange Inheritance.
Here's another quiz question for you. Where's the world's oldest operating amusement park? Is it in China, Denmark, or Turkey? The answer when we return. Now, the answer to our quiz question. So where is the world's oldest operating amusement park? The answer is B, Denmark. Bakken Park in Klampenborg, Denmark opened in 1583.
In 2007, Doug Trimper is fighting to save his family's century-old amusement park. Soaring property taxes are threatening to bankrupt the business. Unless Doug can get the taxes reduced, his family's board of directors may vote to sell the park.
Those were scary times. We're dying on the vine down here.
Dying on the vine, it had reached that point.
Yes, it had.
In March of 2008, success. Doug and his lawyer finally get taxes rolled back to 2004 levels, plus about a 4% increase.
You set a really great example for people to not take no for an answer.
Well, you can't always save your business, but people in this country have to fight back a little bit at government that has become so big and so controlling.
Government control is the problem Doug sees with the Maryland State Assembly bill that would allow the Trimpers to operate as an historic amusement zone. That would lower their taxes further, but also lessen their ability to run the business independently. So Doug turns the offer down, saying he never wanted special treatment from the government.
Why not get every penny you're entitled to?
We've never believed much in entitlements. We just want to be part of the community, do our share, and be treated fairly.
But in October 2008 comes another setback. At the age of 79, Doug's father, Granville Trimper, dies after a battle with prostate cancer. The fight for the park's future must continue without its most persuasive advocate. Doug realizes his father's death could mark a tipping point.
When he died, did he leave a will?
He certainly did.
What did he want to happen to the park?
Oh, he wanted to continue that.
But with each generation, park ownership is further diluted. According to one major shareholder who wished to remain anonymous, some family members would still rather cash out and continue the challenging amusement business.
There's a feeling by a portion of the corporation that they still needed to do that so that they could cash out and have the money for their own lives.
They're not the only ones demanding cash. To cover the steep estate taxes that come due after his dad's death, Doug must finally sell off at least a piece of his father's legacy, the Classic Car Museum.
How difficult was that?
It was real difficult. We were glad because we needed the money to help with the estate taxes, but it was really kind of sad to see part of him going out the door, you know? I mean, it was very emotional.
The 2008 financial crisis, which hits shortly after Granville's death, is causing panic around the world and even more anxiety on the boardwalk. If you're sitting on millions worth of real estate, do you sell or do you hold?
What's your price that you could not refuse to sell the park? 10 times more money than you're taking home a year doesn't mean that much to you?
That's next on Strange Inheritance.
Now, back to Strange Inheritance.
In the midst of the 2008 financial crisis, the driving force behind the Trimpers amusement park, Granville Trimper, dies, passing along ownership of the century-old park to his heirs. For now, Doug Trimper gets to keep running this strange inheritance. According to Doug, some family members are eager to cash out.
How often do you hear from that other side of the family?
Well, we have an annual meeting, and there's still quite an effort to get us to sell the park.
Do they really understand how important it is to you to maintain the legacy that your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather started?
They really don't. And they can't because they weren't here, they weren't a part of it.
What's your answer to them?
We're sorry, but we're not ready to give this up.
What's your price that you could not refuse to sell the park? 10 times more money than you're taking home a year doesn't mean that much to you?
Not to me. I mean, I guess we could have sold out quite a while ago and all had more money, but it's just not what we want to do. We love this business.
It's Memorial Day, the official kickoff of the season, here on the Ocean City Boardwalk. And thanks to Doug, yet another generation of park goers get to enjoy the classic amusements and rides. But the battle for the park's survival never really ends. Now entering the fray is the next generation of Trimpers, including Doug's sons, Chris and Brooks. Like their grandfather, Granville, they vow that they won't be the Trimpers who close the park.
I believe getting our business to the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th generation is our challenge.
It's going to be a long road ahead of us, but I'd rather be on that road than somewhere else.
Hello, Trimpers.
They'll know they've risen to that challenge so long as they can keep that grand old carousel installed by their great-great-grandfather running.
I think it's time I went for a ride.
Absolutely.
I like this one, Doug.
Well, it's all yours.
Go inside saddle. All right, Brooks, hit it. It's my first carousel ride in 20 years.
Well, I think it's about time, don't you?
I do too. I mean, why do I feel 10 again?
This place will do it to you.
As I ride the carousel, I cannot help but marvel that I'm spinning in the same circle where kids have spun for more than 100 years, before a Great Depression and 2 world wars, even before the birth of flight. It's also hard not to feel gratitude to the generations of Trimpers who have seen this amusement park not just as a family business, but as a public trust. In a sense, they've allowed their strange inheritance to be our strange inheritance, too.
Granville Trimper made it his business to service this carousel every single day. He was a man of tradition, but his legacy almost never was. The carnival kid and high school valedictorian earned a scholarship to the prestigious Sorbonne University in Paris, a much higher-powered career in engineering or management calling. But Granville turned it down. He was so much more comfortable in his greasy overalls, fixing the rides, than in a suit and tie. So this family-run amusement park lives on and goes strong into its second century, leaving 5 generations of Trimpers with a heck of a ride. I'm Jamie Colby for Strange Inheritance. Thanks so much for joining us, and remember, you can't take it with you.
Do you have a strange inheritance story you'd like to share with us? We'd love to hear it. Send me an email or go to our website, strangeinheritance.com.